Today is episode 43 with Dr. B.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, DDers. I am so glad that you could join me today. As Jim Rohn said, for things to change, you have to change. He was referring to your attitude and your mindset. Seriously. So let's get to it. First, I want you to take a couple of deep, relaxing breaths. Just breathing in deeply and exhaling slowly. Just a couple of breaths to center yourself and to be fully present. Next, I want you to relax your mind and use your imagination as I describe some of today's characters. Good for you. And it's a win if you took a minute to set the stage for what comes next. I want to introduce you to H.O.P.E. Hope is an attitude and a mindset, one where you're curious and willing to explore the less trodden path. Hope loves seeing options and acting on them. Hope can be lost and can also be restored. Unlike despair, with its bleak outlook, hope lets us see that there's solutions. With hope, there's no place for if something will happen. Rather, hope considers what's needed, how's it going to be done, who do I need to become, how is it possible, first in the world and then for me. Hope is essential for you to achieve beyond your current limits. If you don't have hope that your life can be different, then you're going to have to borrow my hope. I have an abundance of hope, and I'll gladly loan you as much as you need until you can restore your own. Hope is a feeling of expectation and a desire for certain things to happen. It involves trust, and for many who will journey in this space with me, trust has been broken early on in life. And the good news is that trust can be restored too. There's no need to have any pain in advance of making this journey, as you don't know what's in store for you until you arrive. What's in store, you ask? This is my metaphor for the place that you'll find the stock of life. Shelves that are lined with the many options and choices that life has to offer you. And rather than feel overwhelmed, you're going to have the critical thinking skills, good decision-making strategies, and the self-regulation to guide your choices. Careful selections that have the highest probability of giving you what you seek from that choice. How do you get these critical thinking skills, good decision-making strategies, and the self-regulation to guide your choices? You learn them, either from me, someone else, or on your own. But you learn them because they're essential for your happier, more productive, and successful adult life. When it comes to hope, there's two groups of people: high hope people and low hope people. Let me tell you a little bit about each of them. High hope people set difficult goals for themselves and have several goals in different life areas at the same time. They embrace their goals and view them as welcome challenges. They use their goals as mental touchstones for success. They direct their attention and their effort to the demands of that situation, and they're spurred on by the obstacles for greater effort and greater success. They think of alternative routes to their goals when things get tough and they're getting blocked. They apply themselves to the path that's most likely to work for them. They have a strong connection to their life goals, and they expect to obtain excellent returns on their mental investments. And they're typically optimistic. They have a sense of control over their life, good problem-solving abilities, high self-esteem, and a positive mood. Low hope people tend to quit because they're not trained to think of alternative routes. They have one route, and they go that route. They're not actively pursuing goals, and they're more concerned with protecting themselves than striking out to achieve. They're typically pessimistic, and they have no real sense of control over their life. They have limited problem-solving abilities, lower self-esteem, and they have a less than positive mood. And they tend to believe that things are tougher than they really are. This creates stress and a narrow vision of how best to go about solving any of the problems. As you think of your own hope level, if it's low, is that because you're missing many of the skills that high hope people have that allow them to be the high hope people? If so, remember that you can learn these skills even now and become a high hope person and achieve your goals. You can. Just because your life prior to now may have been a series of disappointments or disasters doesn't mean that it's going to remain that way forever. Of course, if you continue to do what you've always done, you'll most likely get what you've always gotten. However, choosing to do just one thing differently than you've done in the past, you've altered the course of your life in a small way in that moment. Imagine tossing a positive pebble into the stream of your life and seeing where it takes you. A small difference in this moment becomes a much greater difference over time. Christine Mason Miller said, "When we focus our energy toward constructing a passionate, meaningful life, we're tossing a pebble into the world, creating a beautiful ripple effect of inspiration. When one person follows a dream, tries something new, or takes a daring leap, everyone nearby feels that energy. And before too long, they're making their own daring leaps and inspiring yet another circle. We inspire each other to act, and we may never know how many lives we touch by our willingness to follow our dream." Take another couple of deep, relaxing breaths and clear your mind of the low hope and the high hope people for the time being, because I want to introduce you to the optimist and the pessimist and their three important differences. The optimist places the blame for a bad outcome on factors outside of themselves, an external explanation so that it's about others, not about them. The pessimist places blame on themselves. It's entirely their fault. The optimist evaluates a failure or an undesired outcome by whether or not it's going to continue into the future. If it's a setback, which is longer, or promises to be a temporary thing that's shorter, like, "I only messed up this one time," rather than something that will continue into the future. The pessimist evaluates every failure or undesired outcome as immediate and a setback, something much longer, and that nothing will ever work out. They go global and they go permanent. The optimist concludes that a failure or an undesired outcome only happens in one performance area, like a specific situation, a work presentation, or forming a new habit, rather than an overgeneralization, which would mean it was everywhere. An example might be, "I'm a lousy swimmer, but you should see me play basketball or baseball." The pessimist generalizes a failure or an undesired outcome to every area of their life. Failure in one area equals failure everywhere in their life, and it's forever. Are you sensing how the meaning that you make out of any experience influences how you think about what happened, how you feel about the outcome or yourself, and the actions that you take? I hope so. Many of you are schlepping a lot of baggage from your past. Does your carry-on baggage contain phrases like, "You'll never amount to anything," or "Who do you think you are?" Perhaps you have memories of a poor grade or a class paper, followed by a lecture at home, or being let go from a job that you'd given your all to for years, and that you've been looking and applying to many positions, yet unable to secure employment for years. Or your marriage or your long-term relationship abruptly ended, and it's meant everything to you. Or perhaps at a very young age, you endured such hardships as physical, mental, emotional, verbal, or spiritual abuse from those closest to you, people who were supposed to be safe and trustworthy. That's a lot of baggage weighing you down, slowing you down, and taking a lot of your energy from the now. There's going to be times as we journey together that I'll ask you to consider shedding some of your baggage so that you can travel lighter. In 1990, Jerry Lansdowne wrote a song entitled "Travel Light." Take with you the best and leave the rest behind. Time goes by, but you find you're still a prisoner of old feelings. Take a listen. It's well worth it. Years ago, I created a process I call leaving home. It became clear that no one that I'd been working with had the experience that I was describing, and we needed to have that to release what didn't serve us and embrace what would. So many of us have been raised in homes where we heard phrases of absolutism. There's only one truth, ours, and that's how it is. Come to find out, that's not true. That was your parents' truth, and it doesn't have to be your truth. There comes a time when every adult needs to leave home, beyond physically doing so, and take with them only that which serves them in their own life by self-examination and letting go. The philosopher Descartes believed that the only way to overcome personal prejudices and preconceived notions was to doubt everything that one believes and to start over by developing a method that would guarantee absolute certainty. The leaving home process that I created isn't that absolute or extreme, yet it is a cleaning house of the not me, the baggage. As I said at the beginning of this episode, according to Jim Rohn, for things to change, you have to change. Of course you do. You know that. Yet you may not know how to change. You may be willing to change. You might be open to change. Yet you don't know how to get started and what the necessary steps are to change from what's true today to what you want to have true tomorrow or for the future. I get it. Again, it's another reason why I created the Adventures in Achievement program, because this is not easy stuff to do on your own. It just isn't. Having a safe space that's free of judgment, full of support, and provides you with the information you need to make the changes that you need to make is the type of environment that you need so you can change and the things can change for you. And again, whether you do that with me, someone else, or on your own, these are the elements I see are necessary for deeper change to be possible. And in order for you to move from being a low hope person to a high hope person, or from being a pessimist to being an optimist, or for you to release all the excess baggage that you've been carrying around for years, you're going to need to do many of the pre-skills or the mindsets that I've been talking about before, such as prioritizing, focusing, planning, scheduling, following through, transitioning from task to task, keeping your word to yourself, closing all your exits so you eliminate choosing again, setting boundaries, making good decisions, and knowing why they're good in advance, and so much more. And just to give you a heads up, in the next week or two, I'm going to be talking about strengths, or rather, your strengths, and how knowing what they are can help you to leverage them for greater success, plus navigate your challenges more easily. I'll be including a link for a free survey in that episode so you can assess your strengths. And in case you're thinking that you need to just jump in right away and get this handled, there's no way that you can take action on all of this at the same time. You're going to need to prioritize and set a sequence of learning and mastery that fits your needs. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up for some serious overwhelm and disappointment. Have the tortoise mindset, one of consistent effort and progress every day, rather than that of the hare mindset, where you get that quick start, but no consistency or staying power. The tortoise is going to serve you well in the long run. How you think about and interpret your external environment is absolutely key. Making empowering meaning is key to your success. Let me give you an example. Sensory-specific information about a glass of water. That means just the facts without meaning. It's at the approximate halfway point, half of the glass capacity. That's the fact. The meaning that you can give it is that the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. Both meanings are true. Now the important part. Which meaning is empowering and which is disempowering to you? If the glass is half empty, does that imply lack to you? The glass lacks the other half? If the glass is half full, does that imply process to you? Meaning that it's half full and it's soon going to be full. Something to consider, since you're the meaning maker of your life events, and you can choose your meanings rather than allow a default meaning from your carry-on baggage. Remember to keep the neurological levels in mind as you're setting yourself up for success, and make sure that each of these areas supports you for greater and greater success. Your environment, that's the external space you operate in, with all its challenges and its opportunities. Do what you can to minimize the challenges in your space. Your behaviors, these are the specific actions that you take or the reactions that you have to what you do. Your capabilities, these are the strategies and the states that you have access to pursue your goals. Your belief system, these are the values and the meanings that you give to things, since you are the meaning maker. Your identity, this is the statement that you make about who you are and what you have permission to do. And your spirit, the vision and the purpose of your life, and the greater meaning you give it. When I consider these neurological levels, I start with my spirit, and I let that flow into my identity, then into my belief system, my capabilities, my behaviors, and finally into my environment. I found that by allowing my highest level, which is spirit, to inform the other levels, the outcomes are much more successful because I'm eliminating options or choices that just don't fit with my higher self. So back to hope. Where were you supposed to learn how to have hope? Who was supposed to teach you? I can't answer that, but what I can say is that if you're a low hope person right now, then you need to take responsibility for learning how to increase your level of hope, as well as shifting your point of view to optimism if you're a pessimist. You need these changes for your success. Become a student of your own life, because you're going to need to discover a lot of things about yourself so you can solve the challenges that you're facing. I believe that there are answers and solutions to all the challenges that we as adults with ADHD face, if we get the information we need to sort out the challenges and see what the underlying issues actually are. It's kind of like being a detective and investigating your own life. Over the course of my 66 years now, I've experienced many different challenges, and I've needed to overcome them if I was going to live the life that's anything close to what I hoped for. And I also needed to overcome them if I was going to shed some light and guide others, perhaps like you, out of your stuckness into the life you've been wanting forever. My phrase for that journey is moving from stuck to unstoppable. And like I've said before, I'm a work in progress, just like you. I still have lots and lots of things to figure out so I can keep moving forward. It's just part of the adventure of life. The difference now is that I'm a high hope person and an optimist. I get solutions oriented and I start figuring out how I'm going to get something done and not give in to the thoughts that there's no way that it can happen. That's just my pessimist mind telling me a lie. We're getting closer to today's 3 important points with relevant stories, action steps, and a favorite quote or two of mine. So let's keep going. I want you to remember that you're called a human being. You're called a human being for a reason, because being isn't about doing. It's about being your best self. And while you're being your best human self, you can work on the human doing stuff that you want to achieve, which will most likely require that you learn some new skills, new strategies, and you shift your mindset to something that's empowering for you. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how you can make the changes you need to make so that things can change for you for the better. Today's 3 important points are transitioning from a low hope to a high hope person, transforming your pessimist self into an optimist, and how to leave home beyond just physically leaving and create your own life.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, great free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. It's almost story time, but first, your wins. That one thing that's gone right today or is right about you. Perhaps you decided that you have the right to enjoy your life starting today. That's a win. Or maybe you shared a win in the community group. That's a win. Or maybe you allowed yourself to feel your feelings and sought to understand them rather than pushing them aside. That's certainly a win. And if you're someplace that you can do this, maybe go stand in front of a mirror and tell yourself face to face about your wins. See if you feel your wins more deeply that way. Just a suggestion. You know, your mind can become consumed with the negatives and what's wrong with you or your life instead of what's right. And since what you obsess on grows, it seems better to obsess on what's right than what's wrong. Don't you think? You're a precious child of this universe and are called a human being, not a human doing. You don't have to earn your value. You were born with it. Your value comes from who you are, not what you do. Got it? So let's transition to our first story. Doris was a high school student who felt that she had ADHD, but she'd never been assessed. She shared her concerns with her family several times, but nothing seemed to come of those quick little chats. She was now in her senior year, and she wanted to attend college for as long as she could remember, but with her grades, she didn't even think that a junior college would take her, and she felt really discouraged. Doris had never been an options thinker, meaning that she'd never thought about having a backup plan if what she was interested in doing didn't work out. In fact, she usually just quit when things started to get difficult because she didn't feel confident that she could solve the challenges that she encountered. Every problem looked huge to Doris. Whether it really was or not, that's how it looked to her. About 7 months before graduation, Doris learned about a research study for teens with ADHD that included a full assessment as well as some short-term treatment. She brought the information to her parents and asked if they would call to see if she qualified, and if so, would they let her to participate. Her parents agreed, and Doris waited anxiously for 2 full days until her parents finally contacted the researcher and learned that Doris was qualified to participate if she did indeed have ADHD. So an appointment was set for the interview and the initial assessment. Doris was anxious to get to the appointment and learn if she did have ADHD and what a difference it might make in her life if she got some treatment, even if it was just short term. If it helped her, she could always ask her parents to help her to get the same treatment for long term from her own family doctor. In fact, Doris started to wonder if it was true that she had ADHD, how quickly could treatment change how difficult things had been for her? If she continued to apply herself and work hard like she'd been doing forever, would treatment make it possible for her to be considered for junior college? She didn't know how quickly things could change, or whether or not 6 or 7 months would be enough time that she could turn things around grade-wise. Maybe there would be a letter that could be written on her behalf, indicating that this was a new diagnosis and she was receiving treatment, and there was improvement. Doris's mind continued to race with thoughts like this for the next 5 days until her study appointment. It was finally the day, and she was a bit nervous now. She hoped that she would learn something that day that could turn her life around, and Doris was not to be disappointed. She had her assessment, and it was conclusive that she had been living with untreated ADHD for years. With her parents' consent, she was prescribed a low dose of medication as treatment in the study, and the medication helped Doris a lot. So much so that she was able to bring up her grades enough in the 6 months before graduation so that she could actually apply to the local junior college and most likely be accepted. She was thrilled. Some background information. Doris had always been a low hope person. She couldn't set difficult goals for herself because she knew that she wasn't going to be able to achieve them. It was hard enough for her to get through the bare essentials of her day-to-day responsibilities without adding more challenges. Obstacles definitely didn't excite her. In fact, she just shut down or she ran away because she got overwhelmed. Until she got the information about the study, she had no idea how to figure out whether or not she had ADHD and what could be done about it. Perhaps her parents should have done more for her about this. However, when you grow up in a family where one or both parents also have undiagnosed or untreated ADHD, the kids often don't get the help they need until later in life. It's common for those with undiagnosed or untreated ADHD to view things as being much tougher than they actually are, or much bigger problem than it actually is, because their skills to assess these things accurately are really lacking. And if the modeling that kids see are parents who quit on things or don't follow through or don't pursue alternative options when they're faced with a problem, then this is what they learn to do in their own life. If you relate to Doris's story, here are your action steps. Focus on identifying whether you're a high hope person and whether you're a low hope person. Follow through once you understand the difference between high and low hope people on what you need to work on to raise your level of hope and where. Self-management of your emotions when you confront the challenges of being a low hope person, such as your sense of lack of control, low self-esteem, and less than positive mood, and work your way through these feelings to feeling better about yourself. You might need to have a few small wins to remind yourself that you can actually overcome challenges and obstacles and to keep going. Transitioning to our second story. Mark grew up hearing and believing that everything that went wrong was his fault, whether it was true or not. Somehow he ended up being the family scapegoat, and it stuck. Besides, he could always find evidence that supported it being his fault, so it was easy to feel how he felt. He certainly made a lot of mistakes that were his fault, So why not blame himself for everything? Because it was just easier that way. He didn't have the ability to see that anyone else had any part in the things that happened and things that went wrong. So he took the full blame for everything. Mark's childhood role models, his father and his uncle, they were both alcoholics. And this didn't help his view of what would be possible for him. Even though he wasn't an alcoholic, he had that dark side of his personality that his father and his uncle also had. Plus, his father blamed Mark for everything that went wrong in the family, whether it was true or not. Since Mark loved his father and never considered that his father could be lying to him, he took the daily blame that was dished out to him. Now in his 30s, Mark was suffering from chronic depression because failure felt like a personal failure, like he was a failure, rather than he failed to achieve the goals that he set for himself. He felt trapped. And for most of his 30 years, things just continued to go wrong for him. So he concluded that nothing was ever going to work out for him, and that's just the way that it was going to be forever. Mark's depression caused him to distort reality and to view everything through the lens of the hopelessness of depression. Plus, he was a pretty black and white thinker and figured that it was illogical that he could have success in just one area of his life, while all the other areas would be failures. It was just easier to think of his entire life as a failure. And with the type of depression that Mark suffered from, medications would never release him from its grasp because there's no skills or insights in pills. Mark would need to see his life and its events through a very different lens. His friends would tell him to lighten up and let things go. They would challenge him to see that certain things just couldn't be his fault. Yet Mark was unable to shift his perspective on where the blame should fall, and it always fell on him. Some background information. It's a serious matter when you take behavioral failures and you turn them into an identity of being a failure as a person. That's what happened to Mark. It started out that it was just a bunch of things that he was failing at. His schoolwork, his friendships with the kids at school, his responsibilities and his family life. And as he got a bit older, it became his failures at work and his seeming inability to hold a job for longer than a month or two. There's even a difference between having a pessimistic point of view and being a pessimist. When you have that point of view, those are behaviors and ways of thinking. When you are that, it's a statement about who you are to the core, your identity. And that becomes a more entrenched pattern and a belief that is a lot deeper to undo. It can be changed, and it's a whole lot more work than just undoing behaviors. If you relate to Mark's story, here's your action steps. Focus on the source of your pessimism and ask yourself if you're open to letting it go in favor of a more optimistic point of view. Follow through on whatever you're willing to work on initially and shift that point of view. You might start with the black and white thinking and challenge it. There are typically exceptions that you can point out to yourself to see that it isn't all or nothing. There are shades of gray. There are exceptions. Self-management of your feelings when you consider shifting from a pessimistic to an optimistic point of view. You might feel that it's fake or phony and balk at making the transition. In time, it's going to feel more real to you as you experience more and more of your life optimistically. It's certainly a much lighter feeling. Transitioning to our third story. Lorna left home at 18 because she just had to get away from all the negativity of her parents and her siblings. It was oppressive for her, and she felt like she couldn't breathe. It would be more accurate to say that she physically left home because she carried a lot of her childhood with her when she left home. All the oppressive beliefs of her parents came with her, and she just didn't know what to do about that. She thought for sure that when she left home, that she would be free of them, and instead she was horrified to hear their words coming out of her mouth on a daily basis. She knew that she couldn't continue this way, and she sought the help of a talented therapist to guide her through this process of leaving home. Lorna and the therapist sorted out as many of the beliefs as possible that Lorna was carrying that didn't serve her and set them aside. There were certainly beliefs that did serve her, such as looking both ways before you cross the street. That was a keeper because it was about her safety and it made good sense to her. With the beliefs that Lorna wasn't going to keep, she was able to challenge them, let them go, and replace them with more appropriate beliefs for her life, not her parents' life. Lorna also learned that she had some distorted thinking patterns that she needed to clean up, besides what she'd learned from her parents. She had some inattention blindness, which means that when she was focusing her attention on one thing, she was completely missing other things that were present. Becoming aware of the information she was missing was important for her so that she could make better decisions. She also had a bit of self-deception going on, which means that she often misled herself, and she was great at justifying false beliefs to herself to make a case for what she wanted to be true, even when it wasn't. Her therapist helped her to work through these issues as well. Some background information. Remember what I said earlier about Descartes' belief that the only way to overcome personal prejudices and preconceived notions would be to doubt everything one believes and start over by developing a method that would guarantee absolute certainty. The process I created for leaving home is initially about our parents having a conversation with us that they never had, and giving us permission to challenge everything they told us and decide for ourselves what to keep and what to let go of and to replace with something that serves us more authentically now. I'll probably write up this process and create a process program so that others can benefit from its power. If you relate to Lorna's story, here are your action steps. Focus on sorting out the beliefs that you're going to keep and those that you're going to discard and replace. Follow through on determining what your new beliefs are going to be to serve your life more authentically for who you truly are now. Self-management of your many feelings about challenging the family rules or the family's values, even though you have permission to do so. And give yourself permission to offer yourself exactly what you need in terms of unconditional love and support as you make your way through this transformational process. A favorite quote. I couldn't just choose one for today, so here's 3 of my favorites. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." Michelle Obama said, "You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all of the world's problems at once. But don't ever underestimate the importance that you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own." And Nelson Mandela said, "Our human compassion binds us, the one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future." The question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, if you're a low hope person, are you committed to becoming a high hope person starting today? I hope so, because it's going to make a world of difference for the options and the outcomes of your life. That's about it for today's episode on hope. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. I do hope that you'll take some of the action steps that I've suggested, because for things to change, you have to change. And that means taking action, like checking out the episode links so you can benefit from all the resources that I continue to create for you, in addition to this podcast show, if that's of interest to you. I'd love to get to know you in the community group that I created on Facebook and interact with you there when I go live. If you benefited from today's episode, take action now And share this show with your friends and family, and perhaps even rate the show or write up an honest review of this episode. Whatever you're willing to take action on today will ripple out into the world and impact the course of your life, as well as that of others that you may never know about. And if you don't want to have to remember to look for new episodes, just subscribe. And the newest episode will be in your feed by 1 a.m. Pacific time on Mondays and Thursdays. So thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.